So, bro, as you can see now, things in Ukraine are very, very bad. Russia has been bombing them and airstriking them. And, to a lot of people that aren't really into politics, they think that the war between these two countries like started last week,
Mhm.
when this has been going on for now many years, the
Yes.
conflict between two of them. So please, can you explain to everyone watching, like, how did this all start between Russia and Ukraine, and what's the real issue? Why do these two countries now hate each other, and what's the reason for all this fighting?
I don't think they hate each other, but I will give a historical context. It's very important for us to understand this context because
Mhm.
simplifying uh, politics nowadays have become a fashion. It's
Mhm.
easy on social media nowadays to give opinions, right? But
Yeah.
are all opinions the same? They're not. So, in my opinion, if you want to check how the situation developed in Ukraine, we have to go back a little bit, few decades, since the end of the Cold War. Since the end of the World War II, right? The United States and the Soviet Union, they engaged in a Cold War, and it was very brutal, and they were fighting each other directly, sometimes through in different parts of the world, and sometimes through proxies, and sometimes diplomatically and economically. Each side tried to take the other side to its knees. This was very clear. But the Americans were successful. They outsmart the Soviet Union, and one of the things that the Americans managed to succeed is to keep the sea power. This is very important for people to understand. There are sea power countries and land power countries. Russia or the Soviet Union was mostly a land power state during the Cold War, and the United States was a sea power, and it encircled the Soviet Union from all sides and blocked it from accessing the international waters. Right now, the Cold War, when it was over and Russia was crumbled, especially after the war in Afghanistan, when the United States supported directly the Mujahideen there, which
The
resulted
Taliban.
later in the creation of Al Qaeda,
Hmm.
they defeated the Soviet Union and it collapsed. That's fine. So the Soviet Union lost a lot of territory. And the United States, since the end of the Cold War, engaged in a policy of attracting the former Soviet Union countries, right? And there were many attractions. I mean, a lot of people were unhappy under the Soviet Union, so they willingly joined the Western camp. But other people resisted. And the countries that resisted to join the Western camp, they were targeted to either American blackmailing, coup d'etats, color revolutions. And we know how it started in Georgia, I think in 2008, in Ukraine in 2014, in Armenia in 2018. All the former Soviet countries were either joined the Western camp or they were forced to join the Western camp through these color revolutions. And for those who don't know what color revolution mean, it's basically the United States uses soft power in a country, in a ex-Soviet Union country, by financing civil society people, non-governmental organizations, and support. And this civil society, they train politicians, they train journalists in order to shape the public opinion in that country from being pro-Russia into being pro-the United States. And one of the last examples of this was in Kazakhstan just a few months ago, and before that in Armenia, and before that in Ukraine. But in Ukraine in 2014, the color revolution was not peaceful at all, like the one in Armenia. It was very violent. There were snipers from both sides, and there are even evidence. And we have to watch the documentary of Oliver Stone, which is, by the way, a Hollywood movie producer. It's not a Russian propagandist, right? He addressed this color revolution and how there were third parties, non-Russian and non-Ukrainian sides, were sniping on both sides in order to create a mayhem and bloodshed, in order to turn both sides against each other. So the United States confessed that they have spent over $5 billion in Ukraine in order to create the conditions for a color revolution. And 2014, they brought a nationalist right-wing government into power in Ukraine. And this nationalist government, they have spread anti-Russian sentiments and even racism against the Russian people. And in Ukraine, you have millions of ethnic Russians, especially in Donetsk, Lugansk, the Donbass region, and in Odessa, right? So the first thing this new government tried to do is to kick out the Russian naval base in Crimea. Why do they want to do that? Because they want to block the Russian access from the sea, from the Black Sea, right? Because from this sea, you can also access the Mediterranean. So what the Russians did, they orchestrated a referendum in Crimea. Of course, I'm saying it very clearly. They orchestrated it, they engineered it, and because they know the vast majority of the people in Crimea are ethnic Russians, they will vote in favor of joining the Russian Federation. So they did this referendum called the self-determination referendum, which is legal according to international law, and they joined the Russian Federation. But the parts in Donetsk and Lugansk regions, they did another referendum to create a separate states called the Republics of Donetsk and the Republic of Lugansk. And why did these sides chose to do that? Because this nationalist government, right-wing government in Ukraine, they targeted the ethnic Russians just because of them being Russian or speaking Russian language. And they have used now, hear me well, neo-Nazi groups, and I'm not exaggerating. There are parades for the neo-Nazis in Kiev and in other cities in Ukraine. They are publicly and explicitly talking about ethnically cleansing the Russians in Ukraine. And they are the grandsons and the granddaughters of the Nazis who fought against the Russian Red Army during the World War II. So this is not a conspiracy theory. Just go on Google and write neo-Nazi Ukraine and watch their photos. It's scary. So these neo-Nazi groups, they have murdered over 13,000 ethnic Russians in eastern parts of the Ukraine. So they chose to separate themselves from Ukraine, and they chose to be independent countries. Now, from 2014 till 2022, there was an agreement called the Minsk Agreement, and the Minsk Agreement asked both sides for ceasefire and the Ukrainian government to negotiate with the people of Donetsk and Donbass for future arrangements of these areas, because they don't want to be part of Ukraine, but at the same time, if they find a middle ground solution between them, it won't be an obstacle, right? So I think they gave around 6 years of time for this Minsk agreement. And when I was in Donetsk in 2015, the shelling never stopped on the Donetsk city and in residential areas. I mean, we were in a safe place because it was well known that the journalists live in that hotel, so they were not bombing it, but everywhere was under shelling by the Ukrainian army, right? So the Russian side was telling the Americans that they cannot include Ukraine into NATO like they did with other Eastern European countries, and they have to withdraw their forces, and they have to withdraw their systems and technology from Ukraine and from other Eastern European countries. Because, I mean, let's be real, why the United States is installing missiles in Eastern Europe? Who are they targeting with? Russia. And they are installing supersonic, I think it's called supersonic missile. Supersonic missiles mean in a few seconds, you can strike Moscow. The missile can hit Moscow in a few seconds. Yeah. And recently, they want to include Ukraine into NATO. That means between the border of Ukraine and Moscow, 800 kilometers. So they arrived on the borders with Russia. And it's not like these missiles. Imagine Russia installing these missiles in Cuba or in Canada and telling them, calm down, nothing will gonna happen, we're just friends. No, you're there because you're intimidating and blackmailing Russia. We know that because you want to disconnect Russia from Ukraine. And by doing so, we well know that Brzezinski, when he set up the grand strategy of the United States, when he was National Security Advisor for Jimmy Carter, he mentioned it very clearly in his book, The Grand Chessboard, that we want to keep Russia away from Ukraine, because if Russia doesn't have any influence over Ukraine, that means it's Eurasian. It no more has a Eurasian character. It will become an Asian power. So it cannot be a superpower if you can't access to Ukraine, and if you can't access to the waters that exist in the Black Sea and then to the Mediterranean, right? So this is the core of the issue in Ukraine. Simplifying it or calling Putin a Hitler or whatever, it's convenient. You can do it on your social media accounts, and you can claim to be an expert. But people who haven't read one history book or studied geopolitics, I think they should be a little bit careful in giving their political opinions on social media, because most of them are calling for now American intervention in Ukraine. And do you know what it means if the US directly intervenes in Ukraine?
Yeah.
I'm not speculating now. It means
What-
World War III. It is
Yeah.
World War III. And the last time World War II or World War happened 70 or 80 years ago, 60 million people died when these armies haven't had a sophisticated weaponry. Now we are talking about nuclear powers, and that means there will be tens of millions of deaths, of course, in Europe. So I hope the people understand the gravity of the issue and stop pushing for war. They should understand that this behavior of the Ukrainian officials and the United States in Ukraine is unacceptable for Russia. I would call the Russian operation in Ukraine an invasion, and it's illegal to be in Kiev and in other areas. It's an invasion, punct. But saying that it is unprovoked is simply untrue.